This is WEBN News, Frostproof Florida with a special report. Earlier in the month, the Democrats on the House Oversight and Accountability Committee issued a report, White House for Sale, how princes, prime ministers, and premiers paid off President Trump to the tune of $8 million in foreign payments from 22 countries while Donald Trump was president of the United States that inured to the benefit of his 500 or more entities. And that $6 million of that money came from China. That was earlier in the month. What do we have now? Jimmy Raskin and the Democrats are now going to follow up with that report, having gotten insufficient responses from Donald Trump and the Trump Organization about the money, the records, what they did with the money, and all of that, are now moving forward seeking from Donald Trump directly with a congressional subpoena, which they are authorized to issue, even though they are in the minority on that House panel, on that House committee. They are able to issue a subpoena, and using their subpoena power, they are seeking all of the records of all 500 entities of the Trump Organization to find out if there's more than $8 million that was received by Donald Trump that lined his pockets and his family's pockets while he was president, whether that was in a violation of the Emoluments Clause of the U.S. Constitution, which says you can't take anything of value from a foreign entity while you're president, and you have to disclose whatever you've taken to Congress. We already know, and it's already been admitted, that Donald Trump did not disclose any of the gifts that he received while he was in office or money that went to the Trump Organization while he was president of the United States to Congress. Zero. Whatever he got in gifts, he took with him out the door. It was the biggest kleptocracy we've ever seen operated out of the White House. And similarly, the money that went to Donald Trump, this $8 million, Trump claims in letters written to the committee that he's absolved from any exposure or violation of the Emoluments Clause because he donated his presidential salary of $200,000 and $450,000 of money that was received from foreign entities while he was president. Nothing to see here. I didn't violate the Emoluments Clause, or if I did, I paid it back. Except there's a gap here. There's a mismatch between the $8 million that the Democrats were able to discover in their report was taken by Donald Trump while he was president through his family and all these entities, and the $450,000 that was paid back by Donald Trump. He admits in his letter writing, the Trump Organization, that they did not disclose any of this to Congress, that they have not turned over proper records, and they don't deny that they took the money in. All they say is, well, these hotel leases and this commercial space that was rented in Trump Tower by the Chinese, that was done like before he was president and all that. What about the other 500 entities? What about following the money of the $8 million and $6 million of Chinese dollars that went to Donald Trump? They don't acknowledge any of that. And so that letter, if the people at the Trump campaign thought that was going to absolve them and get the committee off their back, all it's done now is force the hand of J.B. Raskin and the rest of the Democrats to go for the records. I mean, this is what the Team Trump wrote. They wrote recently that the vast majority of foreign government funding admitting that it took in foreign government funding while Trump was president, sorry about that stutter, came from leases like those secured by China, and that it turned over 100% of the estimated profits from its hospitality properties to the federal treasury. However, it is clear, as Raskin wrote back, that Trump did the one thing the Constitution clearly prohibits. He accepted payments from foreign governments without congressional approval. In any case, the letter doesn't quantify the vast majority what that means, and there needs to be an independent auditor, so the Democrats say, to double check, because we can't trust Donald Trump when it comes to finances, taxes, and his business records. We've got a whole case right now going on in by the New York Attorney General in the New York State Supreme Court, presided over by Judge Engoron, whether Trump's entity committed persistent fraud for more than 10 years in all of his business operations, and whether as a result it should be shut down and put out of business in New York, and hundreds of millions of dollars repaid to the taxpayers of New York. That's going on right now. That means nothing that is in the tax or financial records of Donald Trump's affairs can be trusted from that period. Their own outside auditor, who Alina Habba loves to rely on. We had an outside auditor. If we had an outside auditor, how could we have committed fraud? Why would we have hired an outside auditor? Newsflash, Alina. I don't know if you've done many of these kind of cases. A lot of companies that commit fraud have outside auditors who don't catch it and or have violated their own professional duties and responsibilities and are no longer in business as a result. Mazars, the longtime auditor for Donald Trump, walked away over a year ago and said nothing that we did as an outside auditor can be counted on or trusted, because basically we were lied to by Donald Trump and his internal people. And that's the basis of the trial. So now Jamie Raskin wants to see these direct business records, which we already know are soon to be adjudged to be fraudulent and filled with fraud, New York law, in terms of business record keeping. But Raskin's right. The Democrats and the American public have the right to see the records directly and not just a 1 or 2 page letter from the Trump organization, self-serving at that, saying, well, there's nothing to see here. We took in $8 million, but we paid $450,000 back. That should be fine, right? No, it's not fine. It's not right. And it's an admission of a violation of the Emoluments Clause under the U.S. Constitution. And so what's the purpose of this? The purpose is Donald Trump's not Citizen Trump sitting on a couch somewhere in retirement in Florida. He's not your average Florida retiree, or what they like to refer to as Florida man, right? What is he? He's running for office to be the president again. And so these things matter. That's why the Oversight and Accountability Committee, not led by the Republicans, James Comer and the rest of them, they don't care about this issue. They're trying to track down Hunter Biden and determine whether an unelected official happens to be related to the President of the United States, might have used drugs and or, had a gun for 11 days and or didn't pay his taxes on time, although eventually did pay them. They're busy with that. They're not busy with investigating the financial affairs of their fearless leader. And that's where Jamie Raskin and the Republicans step forward. What's going to happen next? They'll subpoena it. All the business records. He'll reject it, and there'll be a court proceeding. It'll start with a trial level in the D.C. federal court to enforce the subpoena. You'll have a whole bunch of Republicans that'll come out against it. The judge, whoever will be assigned, will have to make the initial ruling. It'll then go to the D.C. Court of Appeals, which is basically Democrat leading. And then Donald Trump doesn't like the result there, just like he didn't like the result of when the New York Attorney General, the Manhattan District Attorney at the time, Cy Vance, went after his tax records. He'll go all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will have to decide whether this is an appropriate part of the jurisdiction of the minority members of an oversight committee to have written a report that I've just outlined for you, White House for Sale, to get the supporting documents and information as part of their investigation about the violation by the president at the time of a major constitutional provision called the Emoluments Clause. Does the Emoluments Clause say what it says and should be enforced, and who enforces it under our separation of powers and our 3 co-equal branches of government, or doesn't it say what it says? And that could only be with the United States Supreme Court. It's important. It's important that the leaders in Congress, even if they're just wearing the D badge, do their job and investigate and report as part of legislative and fact-finding. And that's what we're reporting on right here. Just as we did when the report came out with the bombshell news that Donald Trump took $6 billion of Chinese money, but also from Saudi Arabia, but also from Kenya, and also from other places, including on the enemies list of America, while he was president. And we know now from what's been disclosed and discovered in the New York Attorney General case that Donald Trump didn't put his assets into a blind trust. That's what usual business people do when they're elected to office. They turn over their, and judges do it too, they turn over their assets, and maybe they own a business, over to a blind trust, right? And that's operated by somebody else, and they just get the dividends and the payments from it. But they don't control it. We know Donald Trump didn't do that, right? Unless you could refer to Eric and Don Jr. as being blind, which they are, you turn it over to blind children. That's not the same thing as blind trust, who let him do anything, and were not control officers, as we've seen in the New York Attorney General case, and didn't do their job, but weren't fiduciaries for money and for the counterparties or for anybody involved in the organization. That's what we saw. So Donald Trump doesn't get the benefit of now claiming, well, I didn't line my pockets. Yes, you did, because you didn't turn over the reins of your organization properly to somebody who was independent. You turn it over to your children, who you continue to control while you're in office. I'm sure there are moments when we were paying him to be the president of the United States, and he was being Donald Trump's CEO, chairman of the board of the Trump Organization. And that's a problem, not just for this Donald Trump, for the next one. So we applaud J.B. Raskin and what he's doing on that committee.